It's life.
If you all wanted and you had like the capacity with like a slideshow button to show which character's speaking, I'd read the whole dang thing.
I know.
I know. So cool.
I do have little animations I made of the things for the presentation.
Sorry.
I made these little cartoon characters of each of the characters.
Silence my phone.
Okay. Do we have the link for the live stream?
Oh.
Okay.
Should we share it somehow?
Oh.
Right.
Unless you like.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll do it later. Yeah.
It's yeah.
Is she in San Antonio right now?
Well, Abigail is in Syracuse, and I'm seeing her daughter. I can ask.
Don't worry, it's my friends and mom and we're asking.
Yeah, I would just like to know.
All right. Tell my mommy and she'll have it pulled up.
Mamma mia, dime que pasa. No hay remedio. I have Mexican Matthew McConaughey on my dialect section of my actor resume.
That is good.
So when people are like, "What is that? So you do it," I'll be like, "Bueno."
That is actually really good. Wow.
Get the other on the table. Make sure that
that
great value is product
We gotta
placed.
turn it. We gotta turn it away. They didn't sponsor us.
Okay.
They didn't sponsor us?
Yeah, turn it up.
Fine,
Turn it up.
Just from the barcode.
Oh wait, is it a video you're
This
taking
is,
it?
yeah. Was that a video?
Yeah.
Because she made it. It's a video of me going.
Especially since you're theater now. Does this look okay?
Yes.
I think so.
Oh, is it live right now?
We'll get, yeah.
Oh, okay, on YouTube.
No, it's not.
I'll give it a second.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, because we're talking. Yeah.
It's a delay in case y'all curse.
In the YMCA. Right?
You never know what we're gonna say.
Tiffany could know.
Yeah, we're good. I'm gonna put it so it'll be on our webpage too.
Brilliant.
So yes.
Yes, we're ready.
You're getting our
Yeah.
good sides.
I hope so.
How do we look?
Will we be carrying the microphone too? So like this is for the streaming and this is for the audience?
Hello?
Oh,
Not on.
I think so.
wait. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they'll probably tell
So
us
this
if
is
they
for
want
the. This is. Are these microphones
sure.
just for the audience?
Yeah.
They're not like.
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay.
Oh,
Cool.
okay. Oh, should I turn this back
to.
off then?
There's a day hear us.
Do we need these?
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
Are
Sounds
you
good.
Wait, with or without? With. Okay.
How do we turn them on?
Just like press and hold the power button.
Is this working?
Avocado.
Is this on? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm always personally bothered when sound guys in Mexico start going "sí, sí, sí," right into the microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just get so into it. "Sí."
I feel like they get into it because it's been a problem. They're like, I'm not having this happen again.
I think it's the aspiration for when you do the S sound or any other plosives that they're trying to get. But
I'm glad I don't always have a mic because I would go mad with power. I know, like I'd go mad with power if I always had a mic on me, and I could just be like God out of the top of the ceiling.
you should.
Just a bunch of. I think it'd be great for a little while. It'd be good for a little bit, and then I'd go too far, and embarrass myself. And I'd be like, okay, mic's done.
Excellent on my power.
And we're like, free healthcare, everybody be nice to each other.
Peace and love.
Peace and love.
I generally don't ever say my full name.
Really?
It's just a weird thing to me. Like, we're named usually after our father's last name.
Mhm.
As well.
Yeah.
It's like, what about everybody else? You know?
Well, I have both my mother and my father's name, so I like my name.
But it's your mother's father's name, probably.
Regrettably, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a name.
But yours is hyphenated, so that's
That's
good.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Paloma Díaz-Minshew. That's a good
Yeah.
name. I like my name though.
It's a nice name.
Thanks. I had a teacher in high school that she was my debate. It's like coach and theater. She was the director at the same time, so we were really close. And so sometimes she'd just walk around the room during practice and be like, Paloma Díaz-Minshew. Paloma Díaz-Minshew. She just liked to say my name to the point that if she was actually talking to me, I couldn't tell. Yeah. Or she was just like being like, so she was like Paloma, and I'd just be like, I wouldn't, and she'd be like, no, but I'm actually talking to you this time. I'm like, oh. I got desensitized to her calling my name out because she just walk around the room saying my name.
Yeah. You ever hear that song? Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I referenced it in one of my poems.
Cool. We're ready.
Okay.
Cool.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Yes.
wonderful to have you here. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. Gracias. I'm gonna grab this one. Fantastic.
Oh, sorry, we turned them all off.
Oh, did you?
Light. Yes. Well, they were off here. I can turn it back on.
I'm also the
Put
kind
it
of guy
for
that
puro show. It's for puro show because that's the only one we didn't record.
Okay.
Okay,
There you go. Yeah, we turn them on and then we turn them back
Turn
off.
them
with microphones.
That's true. We look more official.
I want to make sure.
Legitimate.
So, we're good? Is everything settled? Not yet. Oh, we are, okay, fantastic, okay. So we are actually already recording. My name is Professor Tony Diaz at LIbrotraficante, and we are here completing many firsts. We don't often do an event Saturday at noon, but we wanted to make sure that we attended to folks that want to enjoy literature on that day. Additionally, we don't always have a 27th birthday, so it's our 27th birthday, folks. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's no coincidence, even though it is, that Nuestra Palabra was founded right around the birthday of Shakespeare and the funeral of Cervantes. I mean,
And of Shakespeare too. I think Shakespeare
oh,
died.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I wish I could be an honest revisionist and go back and say, clearly we debated long about this.
Time to start.
It's just later on, we went back and we realized, wow, destiny. And I like to think though that to mark this occasion, which to us means that this is the day we wanted to make sure that folks wanted about our community got into the hands of our community through every means possible. We're happy to have the live stream. And also, if you go to nuestrapalabra.org, you can see this live stream and then get a link to some of the other videos that we have, but then you can use this in a classroom, because that's really what we're about as well. And on a more playful note, I kind of like to say that because we're talking about the Bard of the Borderlands today, it's fun to say that maybe Nuestra Palabra was born on this day so that we could rob Shakespeare's grave, take the classics, and as you do, celebrate them in our communities, our turns on our terms, and I think that's powerful. Perhaps Cervantes is rolling in his grave because we use Spanglish, and I remember even 27 years ago, that was controversial. There are folks that would take our flyers and mail them back to us with corrections. Spanglish does not exist. Well, Spanglish does exist, and it is an art form. It is growing, it is living, and that's the beautiful thing about their works. We hope that humildemente, presentándolo de otra manera, los va a inspirar to embrace the impulses of these writers to share their works, but more than anything, the impulse of our community to learn about those writers, take it to our piece, and give it back better than ever. So we're gonna have a fantastic panel, and I want to stress that if you're watching it right now on live stream, please do share it. It's on the Nuestra Palabra Facebook page or nuestrapalabra.org. But also save it for your classrooms, because this is a really great way to get other readers and writers to really understand how art can be arts on different terms. Now, I'm going to turn the mic over to Kathryn, who's just our wonderful panelist, and we're so happy that you made it here from San Antonio. Están en su casa.
Gracias, Tony. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Kathryn Vomero Santos. I'm an associate professor of English at Trinity University in San Antonio. And I'm one of the co-founders and co-editors, or co-founders of the Borderlands Shakespeare Colectiva and co-editor of The Bard in the Borderlands, along with my colleague at the end of the table here, Dr. Katherine Gillen, who is professor of English at Texas A&M University, San Antonio. So we're going to share a little bit about this project today, but I also want to introduce two special guests that we have here with us today. So sitting next to Kate, we have Paloma Díaz-Minshew, who I'm proud to say was my former student. She holds a bachelor's degree in English and Global Latinx Studies from Trinity University. A published poet in the Trinity Review, Paloma graduated as the top student in Global Latinx Studies in 2024 and was honored to receive the Dr. Tony Diaz Continued Commitment and Dedication Award. After working as a summer undergraduate research fellow on Volume 2 of the Borderlands in 2022, she joined the Borderlands Shakespeare Colectiva as a Postbaccalaureate Research Fellow in 2024, in which capacity she is also pursuing her own scholarship at the intersection of Chicana feminism and Borderlands Shakespeare appropriation. And I'm going to add a little addendum to her bio here to say that she's about to start her master's degree in Mexican American Studies at the University of Arizona. We are also joined by Bernardo Mazón Daher, who is a border-bred in San Diego, South Bay. Raised in Chula Vista, California, he graduated from San Diego State University with degrees in literature and theater. While in school, Bernardo became a professional actor, director, writer, educator, and producer, cutting his teeth at the Playhouse and San Diego Rep. Since then, his journeys in theater making have taken him around the country to work with organizations of high prestige along grassroots, community-based projects. He has served as a steering committee member of the Latinx Theater Commons, forged grants and awards opportunities for dramaturgs across Latin America, and co-founded Puyo Theater, a nonprofit for Latinx artists and audiences. Bernardo is an all-around storyteller driven to create spaces where different peoples can intersect to listen, learn, labor, love, and play together. Most recently, he performed in the site-specific play Taxilania when it came to San Diego. So thank you, Bernardo and Paloma, for joining us today. So by way of introduction, I thought I would say a little bit about the Bard in the Borderlands and read from the general introduction that Kate and I co-wrote with our co-editor, Adriana Santos, who couldn't be here with us today, but she also teaches at Texas A&M University, San Antonio. So this introduction will give you a sense of how this project came to be and what we were hoping to achieve by bringing these works together and making them available not only in this print format and beautiful book with the cover image created by Celeste de Luna, but also as an open access text, because we really believe in access and making these texts completely free to students, teachers, and scholars everywhere. So for several decades, Chicanx and indigenous theater makers have been repurposing Shakespeare's plays to reflect the histories and lived realities of the U.S.-Mexico borderlands, creating space to tell stories of and for La Frontera. The Bard in the Borderlands, an anthology of Shakespeare appropriations in La Frontera, seeks to draw attention to this wide-ranging artistic practice, which we term Borderlands Shakespeare, and to make the playtext available to broad audiences. By bringing these previously unpublished plays together in an open access scholarly edition, this anthology celebrates dynamic, multilingual reworkings of canon and place, and it offers a critical framework for understanding the techniques and traditions that inform creative engagement with Shakespeare in this complex region. An expansive area encompassing northern Mexico and parts of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California, the Borderlands have produced vibrant hybrid cultures, languages, and art forms. The borderlands are also a site of ongoing humanitarian crises caused by the interplay of colonization, labor exploitation, anti-immigrant policies, militarization, environmental injustice, and socioeconomic inequity. The plays conducted here dramatize the linguistic, cultural, and political complexities that have shaped this region and Shakespeare's reception in it. The Shakespeare appropriations in this anthology draw on borderlands performance traditions to center historical and contemporary forms of resilience and resistance in the region. Shakespeare proves to be a site of contestation in this context, functioning as a representative of the English literary canon, but also as a malleable set of texts, ideas, and characters that can be reimagined to serve community needs and interests. Readers will recognize common Shakespearean themes in these multilingual plays, but the romantic and relationships, family dynamics, and political conflicts they depict are decidedly shaped by the realities of La Frontera. The playwrights featured here draw on borderlands arts and ideas, incorporating, for example, the Mexican ballad form known as the corrido, the folk tale of Mayorona, the celebration of Dia de los Muertos, and the political construct of Aztlán. Borderlands Shakespeare plays, therefore, do not simply reproduce Shakespeare in new contexts, but rather use his work in innovative ways to negotiate colonial power, to reframe borderlands histories, and to envision socially just futures. And I just want to read a little bit more to connect our work more explicitly to the work of Nuestra Palabra. The Bark of the Borderlands arises from our teaching of Shakespeare and Mexican-American literature in the Borderlands. Through conversations with students and fellow teachers in the region and beyond, we recognize the need not only to make Borderlands Shakespeare plays available in print and digital formats, but also to offer an accessible critical framework through which to understand the complex work that they do. As Borderlands playwrights reimagine Shakespeare to reflect their identities and concerns, their plays give students the tools to interrogate Shakespeare's cultural place, to interpret his works in conversation with their lived experiences, and to create their own artistic responses to canonical works of literature. Teaching Borderlands Shakespeare opens space for thinking critically with students about how we can best serve our communities when we teach, produce, or adapt Shakespeare, and how we can do so in ways that avoid replicating colonialist and white supremacist ideologies. To invoke the work of the LIbrotraficante, Borderlands Shakespeare provides a means of smuggling Chicanx and indigenous literature and history into increasingly surveilled educational spaces. So we are part of the LIbrotraficante in our work, and they are part of our work as well. So with that brief introduction to the anthology, I'll turn things over to Kate, who's going to share a bit about Volume 2 in particular.
So Volume 1 of the anthology focuses primarily on adaptations of Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet, which are, of course, the most commonly taught and performed plays. This volume was an exciting kind of break from that, even though those plays are really amazing, because it kind of looks at less well-known and less frequently taught source texts, and also diversifies the geographical and cultural and historical contexts in which playwrights are adapting those Shakespearean sources. So the first play in the anthology is a play by Ramon Flores and Lynn Knight called The Merchant of Santa Fe. And so it is an adaptation of The Merchant of Venice set in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And the Shylock figure is a converso. So he's a Spanish Jew who is practicing his religion, but in hiding. So he can't be open about that because he'll be persecuted by the other characters in the play. But then there are Christians, and then there are the Jewish characters, and then there are also some indigenous characters as well in that play. And so that work is really thinking through that historical moment and some of the social and cultural tensions that are arising within it. And then we also have a brilliant play called Invierno by Jose Cruz Gonzalez, who is a well-known Chicano playwright. He wrote a play called American Mariachi, for example. And Invierno is a Winter's Tale adaptation, and it is set on the central coast of California, on the land of the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians. And so that play is really looking at the effect of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo when the United States took the land that had been before that conquered by Mexico, in California in particular. And so it's looking at that context, but one major theme in The Winter's Tale is the idea that what is lost can be found. And so it's a story about family division and then also reconciliation. But one of the things that is lost and found in that play is the Samala language, which is the ancestral language of the Chumash peoples. And so that language is itself now being revitalized in the community, and it's integrated into this play as kind of part of that revitalization effort in really powerful ways. There's another play called La Comedia of Errors by Lydia Garcia and Bill Rausch, which is an adaptation of Shakespeare's play, The Comedy of Errors, but it is adapted bilingually to deal with issues of family separation, deportation, and militarization of the border. So in Shakespeare's play, there are these two sets of twins who are sort of separated from each other, and like each of the pairs, like they're both separated. But in this play, one set of people comes from Mexico and the other are Mexican Americans, and they speak different languages primarily. And then they meet, and it's a really funny play, but it's also a really powerful play because the families in this case have been separated by the violence of the border primarily. And so that's a play that really resonates with our political moment, as does Bernardo Mazón Daher's play, Measure for Measure / Medida por Medida, which is a measure for measure adaptation that is fully bilingual and really intended to speak to border communities and to fully honor the Spanish language, like as equal to, if not superior to, your translation is really beautiful, Shakespeare's language, right? And so that play was originally performed in San Diego in 2016, is that right? And so at the San Diego Public Library, and we're excited that it's in our play, and it's really one of the most beautiful works that we've had the privilege of editing. And so I wanted to read a little from our anthology introduction to this volume specifically, which is going to put Measure / Medida in conversation with that other play I was just talking about, La Comedia of Errors, because those are two really fully bilingual plays that are also particularly resonant in our current political moment and are thinking through issues both of border violence, but also gender violence. So I wanted to read a little about what we had to say. Taking place in a more contemporary setting, La Comedia and Measure / Medida feature bilingual dialogue in a variety of Spanishes, Englishes, and Spanglishes. Spanglish is really important in these plays, to reflect the heterogeneous speech of fronterizos. They also incorporate everyday practices of translation, both in legal contexts, with state-appointed translators, and in the more informal modes of interpreting that occur routinely in multilingual communities. For example, La Comedia features several moments in which some characters interpret for the benefit of other characters as well as for the audience. And in particular, that play introduces a figure called La Vecina, right, the neighbor, who translates and interprets for audiences who might not understand what's being said. And she also comments in really funny and provocative ways throughout the play. So in addition to adding her to Shakespeare's Comedy of Errors, La Comedia highlights the value and complexity of this interpretive work, which is often as much about culture as it is about language. Measure Medida similarly includes a scene in which a social worker translates Spanish dialogue into Shakespearean English for Juliet, a white monolingual character. In this moment, Shakespeare becomes the translation rather than the original, a reversal that disrupts textual and linguistic hierarchies. Mazón artfully translates Shakespearean verse into his own Spanish verse form throughout the play, thus resisting the tendency of some adaptations and productions to use Spanish only in informal dialogue or in scenes with lower-class characters. The play's linguistic innovations often reflect and intersect with the injustices faced by border communities. The appropriations in this volume depict the movement of individuals and groups across shifting and sometimes restrictive geopolitical borders, and the play set in recent periods dramatize the particular hardships faced by those who are undocumented. For instance, the legal system is not designed to support characters such as Antífalo in Romeo de México in La Comedia, or Mariana in Measure Medida, all of whom live in danger of deportation and detention because of their legal status. In addition to addressing the precarity of migrants, several of the plays also deal with gender violence. Measure Medida recontextualizes Shakespeare's most direct exploration of consent and sexual assault within the context of border communities, emphasizing the manifold ways that power can be abused to harm people in vulnerable positions. So, as they navigate these personal, legal, and social landscapes, many of the characters are also very resilient, and they are guided by their spiritual traditions. In particular, in Mazón's play, Isabella, a central character who, as we'll hear more about in a minute, is very rhetorically sophisticated in both Spanish and English, but she is also facing sexual assault by a figure who's a sort of deputy duke. He's standing in for the duke. And so in that play, Isabella remains steadfast in her devotion. She's also about to become a nun to her religion, although those in power attempt to use it against her. And also characters in La Comedia seek sanctuary in a chapel, thus recalling the many undocumented immigrants who have been similarly protected in places of worship. Of course, that right is being threatened currently. So across the plays in this volume, the theater serves as a source of sanctuary, a site of collaboration, solidarity, and hope. Through the composition, production, and performance of these plays, communities come together to act as witnesses to cycles of violence, to heal the wounds of the past, and to imagine futures in which comic endings are possible. So these are really powerful plays, and we're so thrilled to have Bernardo here with us today, and Paloma as well. And as we mentioned earlier, Paloma is about to enter a graduate program, and she's written a really beautiful essay on the play Measure / Medida por Medida. And so we're really thrilled to have them here to perform a scene from the play with us. And then after, we'll ask them a couple of questions to kind of get more of their thoughts on the production. So what you need to know before they get started is that Isabella has been propositioned by this duke figure who's a really terrible, horrible person. He's also condemning that her brother, Claudio, he's asserting, right, that her brother needs to be put to death because he's had premarital sexual relationship with his fiance. And he's like, this is a very puritanical, like, duke, right? And he's like, no, you had sex, you can't be, in the city anymore, you're going to be put to death. And then he asks Isabella, he says, you have to sleep with me in order to save your brother's life. But Isabella is about to become a nun and really wants nothing to do with that. So she's going to talk to her brother. This is Isabella, and this is Claudio. So they're having a conversation, and she's about to explain what's going on, and then Claudio responds.
Where are we? I mean, like,
where are you?
Story,
yeah, what's seen in the prison.
Visiting hours.
Yes, sorry, he's in the prison. Thank you.
So the fiance is white and one of the only explicitly white characters in the play, which kind of plays into the dynamic of why he has been arrested and sentenced to death for getting her specifically pregnant.
Hermana mía, dime qué pasa.
Haz tus preparaciones ya. Mañana you set on.
No hay remedio.
None but such remedy as to save a head, to cleave a heart in twain.
Pero hay alguno.
Sí, hermano, podrás vivir. There is a devilish mercy in the judge, if you'll implore it, that will free your life but fetter you till death.
¿De qué modo?
In such one as, si tú lo aceptes, would bark your honor from that trunk you bear and leave you naked.
¿Qué quieres decir?
Me das miedo, Claudio, and I quake, lest thou a feverish life should entertain in 6 or 7 winters more respect than a perpetual honor. Darest thou die? The sense of death is most in apprehension, and the poor beetle that
we tread upon in corporal sufferance finds a pang as great as when a giant dies.
¿Por qué me humillas así? ¿Tú piensas que me van a dar resolución tus poemas tiernos? If I must die, I will encounter darkness as a bride, y lo abrazaré.
There spake my friend mine, there my puppy's grave did utter forth a voice, yes, thou must die. Eres demasiado noble para conservar una vida con mentiras. This outward sainted deputy, whose settled visage and deliberate word nips youth in the head and follies doth anew, as falcon doth fowl, es un sangrón.
El ángelo.
Dost thou think, hermano, if I would yield him my virginity, thou mightst be freed?
Dios mío, no puede ser.
That I should do what I abhor to name, or else thou diest tomorrow.
No lo hagas.
Oh, were it but my life, I would throw it down for your deliverance as frankly as a pin.
Gracias, querida Isabel.
Prepárate, Claudio, for your death.
Sí.
Creo en Dios, Sol Padre Todopoderoso, Creador del cielo y de la tierra. Creo en Jesucristo, su único Hijo, nuestro Señor, que fue concebido por obra y gracia del Espíritu Santo. Nació de Santa María Virgen, padeció bajo el poder de Poncio Pilato, fue crucificado, muerto y sepultado. ¿Qué pasó, hermano?
That's a beautiful thing.
Y vida sin honra, detestable.
But to die and go, we know not where. To lie in cold obstruction and to rot. To be imprisoned in the viewless winds and blown with restless violence round about the pendant world, or to be worse than worst of those that lawless and uncertain thought imagine howling. It's too horrible.
Dios mío.
Hermanita, let me live. El pecado que puede salvarme, naturaleza lo absolverá, convirtiendo toda la pecado.
Oh, you beast! O cobarde sin fe, o desgraciado! Wilt thou be made a man out of my vice? Is it not a kind of incest to take life from your sister's shame? What should I think? Palabras no. Oraciones sí. I'll pray, but still no word to deliver thee.
Escúchame, Isabel.
Oh, fie. Tu pecado no fue accidente, sino costumbre. Mercy to thee would prove itself a bawd. 'Tis best you die as quickly.
Oh, hear me, Isabela. That's the end of the thing.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Such a beautiful rendition of that scene.
Thank you.
So now we have some questions for Paloma and Bernardo. And we'll have time, I hope, for questions from you all as well.
Thank you both. That was amazing. It's so wonderful to hear that play come to life after spending so much time with it as a text. It's just amazing to hear it in Spanish, English, Spanglish, and all the story. So my next question is for Bernardo. I'm wondering if you could tell us about your process of adapting and translating measure for measure in your measure for measure video.
Yes, I was in college and I rarely indulged in reading Shakespeare for fun. And so I had to learn which sources to choose from in terms of publications, because you can read something by the Arden versus something, the same play by another publisher, and they'll have different footnotes, sometimes different mechanical details like punctuation. So when I was writing this, I had the Arden version of Measure written in front of me. I had an adaptation that the Oregon Shakespeare Festival produced, like in 2011 or something like that, which was a mainly English script with moments, so Spanish accenting, that I disagreed with artistically. And on my right side, I had an actual Spanish translation, I think probably written by another scholar, not at all with the lens of appropriation or adaptation. So I had those three, and then I had my laptop where I was like on a Google Doc, working with some internet version of the script, reformatting it, writing punctuation wherever it kind of matched the art in. And moment by moment going, what would the character in this third cultural world say or do? And continuously thinking, this has to be an adaptation. I don't have any kind of creative acumen to do too much harm to the text. So that was always a priority. So this is still Shakespeare's words essentially, and as it was intended, just maximizing accessibility for bilingual listeners.
Can you tell us, please, Bernardo, about why you set the play in San Diego?
It's the only world I knew. Yeah, I never really lived anywhere else. Originally, it was going to be a commissioned production with an entire creative design team to be performed live at the U.S. border in French Park. And in the development of the script and the material and my own enrichment on the various controversial issues that the play addresses, I decided to be a little bit more committed to a certain vision, and so the production kind of divorced itself from its funders, as happens sometimes when you become a little more radical with these things you.
Yeah, so we wrote about your play, as you heard in the introduction, but how do you see Shakespeare's Measure for Measure resonating with the concerns of the Borderlands?
With the concerns of the Borderlands today?
Yeah.
And this is before BJT, so and it's very different now. But also, kind of like what it always was, I think what it has been destined to be, we're just kind of lifting the shroud on the systems of repression and cultures of bigotry that have been all around us all along.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So, what was your favorite part, or what is your favorite part of working with actors on bilingual Shakespeare performances, and were there any memorable things that happened during your production of this play?
Oh yeah. It's super fun. Just philosophically, most of my theater work is so oriented around bringing people to the table who have not gotten to participate in the arts altogether. So there are a lot of actors for the first time putting their mouths around these words, or standing in front of the stage and practicing the basics of projecting and being heard and seen. So the opportunities for moments like, I think Isabella says it in the scene. Yeah, she's like, she says, this outward-stated deputy, whose settled visage and deliberate word gives youth in the head and follies to the new, as falcon doth the fowl. You know, those moments really kind of landed on the cast, who, for 10 seconds, would be like, what is she saying? She doesn't like him. What does she think about? Oh yeah, it's like, I get it, you know, and we'd be charmed by that and be like, okay, you know, the author, we probably took too many liberties and try to simplify it, and we look at the original text and be like, actually, it's not her off. It's actually what she said. A lot of moments that kind of appear almost magically, as if the adaptation was writing itself. So like, I had no relationship with Measure for Measure prior. It was entirely like handed to me. It was like, make an adaptation of this way. I said, I've never heard of it. I don't want to read it, but I believed in the person who handed it to me, a Chicana scholar that I really respected and felt to. So all I knew about the art of adaptation was that you wanted to be specific on where you were setting it and why, because otherwise it might seem contrived, and the audience that you want to reach can't really access it. It's just like, you're still saying you're doing the same thing. Perhaps the people's skin tones and accents are a little more recognizable. However, we still don't get it. It seems purposeless, and you're just trying to force feed us the same stuff. Over time, I started to see how, in the coincidence of the environment, the landscape that I was familiar with, that I grew up from, things started to appear it was almost a devising process, this script. I did do most of the authorship and translation, but there were constant moments like, how would we say this if we were to code switchify it? And the more difficult moments were definitely in verse. Like, you can't get people around a table and be like, all right, we're going to do the ambipentameter in Spanish, which doesn't work. But with the prose moments, absolutely. And we find really kind of enjoyable coincidences that you all notice without me even handing it to you, like Angelo's name being so close to Anglo, or Pompey, the English character's name, which is very weird to us, becoming Pompies. And all of the butt jokes that they already written into the script.
Shakespeare loves the butt jokes.
Yeah, all kinds of body part jokes. Yeah, I think that's what I knew. Like, we just made something that was bigger than us and was meant to be written. And as the adapter, your objective ought to be just letting it come to the page and getting out of the way of whatever that is.
Thank you. So, Paloma, you have written a brilliant essay on Measure Medida from a Chicana feminist perspective. Could you tell us about why you find Isabella to be such a powerful figure?
I could tell you so much. I wrote like 15, 20 pages about it. I guess the easiest way to quickly relate that is with talking to my friends, other members of my community, all the Latinas, all the Chicanas, Mexican American women that I've spoken to about this play, when I tell them how it ends, basically have a reaction of, yep, that's how it goes. Absolutely, yeah, that's how they treat women, And then when I talk to my friends that are men, a lot of them are like, this is an outrage. I would never, if they have like siblings. Like, I had this one guy friend of mine who was like, and like slammed his fist on the table and stood up and was all mad. And I think kind of the discrepancy of those reactions is kind of the heart of this play, of how isolating and alone and vulnerable Chicanas are in the world. And kind of, she becomes a cautionary tale of how alone you will be if you overly rely on these people and institutions that will say they are protecting you via your own oppression. And how being the perfect woman, it never works out, particularly in a Borderlands context, because you can't be the best daughter and the best hija, the best sister and the best, hermana, et cetera, and kind of fulfill what everyone expects from these women. It also, she just kind of exists in this almost oxymoronic state where she is at once the most powerless character, and yet within the context of the play, universally acknowledged to be the most powerful orator. And people in this play derive power from their ability to speak well, and she speaks the best, and yet it never works out for her. She wins every argument and loses every battle.
That's actually a great transition to my next question, because one of the things that I think is so innovative about the article that you've written is not just that you're focusing on the code switching or the translingualism of this play, but you're also focusing on the silences in this play. So I'm wondering if you could tell us about the importance of focusing not just on what is said, but what's not said.
Yes, absolutely. The most striking moment of this play is the ending, and I suppose I will spoil a little bit of it. Our sweet nun, who is put in this impossible situation y'all saw in the scene earlier, the Duke proposes to her, and he looks to her brother, and her brother just kind of is like, yep, and then leaves and abandons her. And it's kind of made clear that she was set up by her brother and the Duke in conjunction with each other, so that she was put in this situation. And then there's just this moment where she's just on stage, quiet and alone, and she says nothing. This kind of existed in the original text. It's why it's one of the Shakespeare's least popular plays, because the ending is like ambiguous, but also kind of very uncomfortable. I think what's so brilliant about this version of the text is it stops being problematic when you just make it explicitly awful. And I hate the ending, but I love it. I love that you did that, and that's what makes it. In this silence, audiences are kind of brought into the experience of Isabela. Martina Ferrari, in an article on decolonial silences, expressed that trying to name every aspect of colonization or oppression can be a secondary disservice to the oppressed person, because you can never name every aspect of it. You can describe a scenario, oh, he looked at me funny, but the truth is behind that, I think any woman that's been looked at funny by a great old man, is that there's a lot that's not being said there about how that experience goes. And so you see that in Isabela at the end of the play. And at the very, if there are audience members that are like, what's she gonna say when he proposes? Like, what is it? They are kind of cut out of Isabela's character, and they're kind of shoved out. And the only people that are brought into her experience to understand it are the people that don't care what the next words out of her mouth are, but the fact that she has been put in that situation and abandoned in that way.
I'd like to address how in the world of the theater, there's already enough ambiguity and debate about the meaning of the texts and why we were still performing them, how they should be interpreted, all that, there's just too much lack of clarity in a time where our society needs people to take a stance on issues and to speak them in explicit and confrontational ways. So there was that conflict as an adapter, which was not wanting to put too much of an original selfish spin on the language, but also wanting to spell it out what's relevant and urgent about centuries and centuries of systemic oppression on women. This is not a play written for the border region in the 20th or 21st century. There were very few stage directions that were, I think, more relevant today, except for Exit Pursued by a Bear. Otherwise, there's nothing in the original measure that makes you go, oh, that's what that means, and that's how we should feel about it. So, we took a direct stance, and it was really validating for me as an artist. I was younger than other ones now, to be understood posthumously. I'd like to read a piece of your essay that I think really drives it home, synthesizing from other experts that have been pointing this out in the measure for measure discourse. So Paloma writes, by making manifest powers that usually remain invisible, the play brings audiences to meditate not only on the validity of Isabela's choices, but also on the system that forced her to make them. Measure Medina demands that its audience witness her pain and then become actors, or rather active agents, in their everyday lives, working to affect and address the social and political realities that would leave Isabela in a state of ethical loneliness. I really like that.
Thank you. I'm like having a fan moment, like, he liked it. I do think that the end of that play is so impactful because it does kind of force you into action. It is such an engaging, which partially is because it was written to be set on the border, right? Like literally in Friendship Park, that is a part of the border that people are supposed to be able to touch one another. And because of that, it carries these resonances of like street theater. You can think of like ACT UP, those like 8th Street performances that would demand political action as a result of where the play is being enacted. And so for a play that is intended to be enacted on our physical border, we are brought to look at Isabela, to look at how much she is in pain, to look at all the ways she's been betrayed and brought out and coerced into this uncomfortable situation where she has no choice, and try to prevent that in our own lives. I think, kind of going back to the example I used earlier of my guy friends being like, "Dah!" The more impressive reaction for me from my male friends was the thoughtful ones, was the quiet, contemplating, taking in what it means that I resonated with this play, that their other female friends resonated with this play so much. And I think that is kind of part of the impact, is bringing people to recognize, as I said, I wrote, the invisible forces. I think that's why it's so important to, coming back to the question, to pay attention to the silences, because especially nowadays, a lot of the most powerful forms of, well, maybe not right now under this current president's second term, but a lot of the more powerful oppressions or continuations of white supremacy and sexism are not, I don't like you because you're a Mexican. It's just kind of the more subtle ways that handshakes happen. People, a woman says something and the guys go like, a little bit of an eye roll. It's these quiet things that are small but mighty over time that you have to pay attention to, because that's how you actually nip these things in the bud. That's how you actually change the futures for potential Isabelas in your life.
I love that. So Paloma, I know you were Dr. Santos' student, and you're about to go to graduate school. So could you tell us a bit about why studying Borderlands Shakespeare has been so transformative and can be transformative for students, and how you might kind of carry some of what you've learned and what you've written into your work as a graduate student?
Well, yeah, it's why I'm a graduate student. Sorry, I'm like...
Everyone's gonna cry.
With y'all, sorry.
So you see the power, right? Of Borderlands
Okay, I got it. I'm tough girl.
Making students and professors.
It's not the first time I've cried doing this project. Sorry. Except when you're like, before this project, before I was introduced to this research assignment, I had not ever been exposed to any of our literature like that. I remember, of course, I grew up a majority white school that I went to in North Texas. The world that I had been taught about us is like, conquistadores came, that was a thing, Santa Ana is the devil, Cesar Chavez and his little farm workers had a march, and now everything's great. And they're, just like MLK, and now racism is solved. And obviously no, but I did not know that we existed in the ways that we do all over everywhere before I encountered this project. One of the main takeaways, or I guess revelations I had within myself, is I was like, duh, of course there are Mexican-American theater nerds that like Shakespeare, they're doing bilingual adaptations. Duh, of course there are. Mexican-Americans are humans, humans make art. And it was kind of like, it was a wonderful revelation, but also kind of saddening to me that it took encountering this project for me to even be reminded of my own humanity, and the fact that like, I am not unique for wanting to be involved in these kinds, to have these interests. It is just that we have not been exposed to our own histories, our own stories, our own works. I think that's why the entire Borderlands, like these anthologies, are so important, because hopefully it does not take someone until they're, in their sophomore year of college to read a bilingual text like that, to encounter her own language. I remember that first summer, I talked to you about this a lot, I fell in love with my own Spanglish because I had never been taught to love it. And so that was really, again, this is like the first time I cried about this was reading How to Tame a Wild Tongue by Ansel Duane Preparation, and being like, it is linguistic terrorism, like, oh my God. And I think that's the power of these works, is not just to see yourself reflected in literature, but to be reminded of our own potentials. And like I'd always wanted to be an academic growing up. And my mom and I would joke, we're like, man, if we were rich white men, we would never leave college. That would be so cool. And my mom would be like, I would have 20,000 degrees. She's actually getting her second master's degree right now, so shout out to her. She's I know. My mom is amazing. She's watching this. She's very embarrassed. I already know, but she is phenomenal. In the last couple of years, she's been able to get 2 master's degrees. But for me, it was just this project to realize that I wouldn't have to carve that path out. I was like, I don't want to have to fight the fight that people before me apparently already had. And I think that's the power of these, is making people realize you don't have to forge your own path. There is already one. And I just have to go down, and I have that ability to choose. And so, yeah, it's all very meaningful to me, and I'm very honored and grateful that I happened to be on a Zoom call that sent me to our wonderful Dr. Santos over here and started me on this path, because I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be going to grad school. I don't know what I'd be doing. But none of this would be happening for myself. Not to make it about me, but me as a representation of the wider community.
Well, I think Paloma is obviously, just such a great example of what is possible when we get these works in the hands of students who feel seen and heard by these works. So it's just so wonderful, not only to have you here, Paloma, but to have the playwright who inspired you to be here and to hear you two dialogue with each other. I am mindful of the time, so I want to see if our audience has any questions.
Right there, yeah, close to that, thank you.
Close there?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Erica. And first of all, I'm really surprised. I didn't know I was gonna find this today. Like I went here, I came here, sorry, and I read the flyer and I went to your Instagram and your Facebook. But it was until you were talking about this, and I'm a Spanish middle school teacher here. And I was like, I need this book for my students. I was totally picturing them like what you say, I teach Spanish native speakers. So they are so afraid to speak Spanish. They are like struggling to get closer to their culture. But also I'm a cultural journalist. I'm a journalist. So I come from the desert, from the Sonora desert, and Arizona has been part of my life, like forever, and the Borderlands. So I was thinking about the thing you said about the corridos and the first, when you were talking about the introduction. And I was thinking about Mexico, how they're struggling with the thing about corridos that is so part of our culture, but now they want to change it because of the violence and the missing persons, the drugs. So they're trying to fix that. They're trying to mutate or transform them. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is a great, plot twist about that. And I was thinking about so much. So I don't know if you've heard about what Mexico's struggling with the thing about corridos. And if you have like some kind of thoughts about that or reflections, because this comes back and forth for that, right? So I'm sorry, my English is not good. Me refiero en español, but I know we have a wide audience. So,
podemos pasar ahí porque, o sea, es completamente al contrario del propósito de lo que estamos haciendo. We want to talk Spanish.
Mejor que sí, es nuestra palabra, ¿no?
¿Podrías contextualizar?
Entonces, muchas gracias por hablar español. El asunto de los corridos, o sea, ustedes, cuando terminaron esto, me imagino todavía no había explotado en México lo de vamos a cambiar los corridos. Ahorita creo que incluso hasta la presidenta está haciendo todo un movimiento a nivel nacional y está haciendo concursos para que la gente use el mismo formato, pero con diferentes textos. Y la gente dice, pero es que la esencia del corrido es contar la historia de ciertos personajes. Entonces, no sé, así tienen, if you have some kind of thoughts about that. I have so many thoughts about the corrido. One thing that's amazing about these Borderlands Shakespeare adaptations is that they'll often find moments in the Shakespeare text where one of these makes more sense than a chorus, for instance. So the famous opening of Romeo and Juliet, they have the chorus come on stage and essentially spoil the whole plot and then focus sonnet, two households, but in two of the plays in volume one, both The Language of Flowers by Villarreal and The Tragic Barrio of Romeo and Lupe, which I think your students will really enjoy because it is very bilingual. The Borderlands steps in and tells the story of Romeo and Juliet, or Romeo and Lupe, but also tells the story of the place where these plays take place. And what we've seen in our teaching is that students who are familiar with the corrido as a form, which they've grown up listening to, their families have listened to, bring that knowledge to the classroom. And they bring specifically the storytelling knowledge and the poetic knowledge of that art form. So that's really beautiful. And then in this volume, volume 2, in Guillermo, which Kate was talking about, that takes place in California, in which the playwright Gonzalez recognizes a ballad already in the Shakespeare play, but he writes a corrido instead, and his corrido is about a sort of spoken through the voice of a character who identifies with Joaquin Muñeca. So I think there's a lot of potential in the classroom to engage students in conversations about the corrido form, and also to encourage them to write their own corridos about issues and characters and historical figures that they care about.
Yeah, I just wanted to say too, I mean, I'm not sure how much you can have these conversations, you know, depending on what level you teach, but I've been having some conversations with my students because I was teaching one of the plays that uses corridos, and then one of my students was like, wait, corridos como tumbas, right? Like, and asking questions, and then we're thinking about like, what are the ways in which these art forms are transformed, right? And how kind of transformation and adaptation and translation are just like part of the way people, like as Paloma was saying, right? People tell stories, like we make art, and art moves, right, in different contexts. And we have a play that we're editing for volume 3. It's called Marquez, and it's a narco Macbeth, and so it's kind of thinking, yeah, it's pretty wild. And there's another play called El Beto, which is not in the anthology, but it's a brilliant play and it has puppets, and it actually starts with a narco corrido, and so it's then thinking about, you know, the reasons people entered the drug trade, and also then thinking about Macbeth, which of course is this very violent play. You can kind of think of these like themes of Scotland as, I mean, one, colonized subjects, right? But also as these kind of like, they're warlords in a way, right? And so we kind of think sometimes like, oh, like Macbeth is this amazing humanist play about ambition or some universal theme, but it's also really about like politics and conflict and colonialization and all kinds of things. And so I feel like there's this question, right, like I think around all of these different forms and kind of art, I guess, and translation and adaptation can be a way of just opening these questions. I don't have any real answers, but I feel like the students were interested in, my college students were interested in kind of like opening that conversation. Yeah, that's what.
Sure, I'll sit down.
Erika, yo fui uno de tus estudiantes, metafóricamente. Pero también, sí, Spanish speakers, I remember, tenía mucha vergüenza.
Well, I mean, no, at one point in Texas, if you spoke Spanish, you were hit anyway. I mean, there's that. But, and I really didn't want to talk about the question about the corridos, but I can't resist. Also want to ask you, we do want to do an evergreen interview. It'll be short, but that one will be, especially for classrooms, if you all have time.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But I do have to say, and I'm trying to link it to the question I didn't want to ask. So to me, it's kind of like, okay, you're gonna curtail. It didn't work to ban banda, so banning banda did not work. You know, you want to curtail corridos. Part of me is almost saying, well, how about alleviating the drug issue? You know, if the people are embracing that, maybe you should look at all the laws, policies, and politicians leading up to that versus going after the art. And I do want to thank you all because you prove what we say, only art can save us. And it is magical that you're talking about these forms. When they're on the border, they're pliable, they respond to us at the time, and they work for us, because how fitting that at this moment, my wife and I were talking about, we were at a retirement party for two wonderful Rice professors. They were in the feminist studies program. They said, we're not retiring, we're activating. The fight continues. And there were moments where they were talking and we were like, wait, we can still say this in public. We can still say things about politics. And it's almost as if, I think one of you said it, all the illusions and all the layers have been removed. And it's looking at, these structures, we're back to where, and I want to ask you then to maybe respond to, this art is powerful now, we need it now, because I've been in rooms where people are saying, let's not teach Mexican American history, let's make it part of American history, and let's teach American history. I'm like, this is like arguments from before, and even now, yesterday there were talks of will feminist studies continue in this era. So I say all that because y'all, I'm not depressed, I'm fired up. And I want to mention how this work, and it's beautiful to hear how the Profe inspired you, that's magical, but that's why they're banning it. I'm going to turn the mic over and say, that's why they're banning these books, these cultures, and that's why they stop these studies, so that doesn't happen, but it must not be stopped.
Well, I think a lot as a Shakespearean about what my obligations are, because I know that I have the degree and the resources and the name recognition where people might not ask questions. So I can use that and then redirect those resources to these works and to the issues that might be seen as worthy of being banned or dangerous, or so I can teach Borderlands Shakespeare, I can teach feminist approaches to Shakespeare in ways that might be quote unquote safer. But I also think it's about rechanneling our attention. We've given enough attention to Shakespeare. It's time to turn our attention to these other places, but also to recognize the ways in which artists are doing these transformative things with Shakespeare and are, in my opinion, some of the most sophisticated interpreters of that work. So it's about elevating work from Mexican American and indigenous communities, but also saying, if we want to talk about the future of Shakespeare, it's here, in this region, if we care to preserve it.
And also it's connecting the talks of this with that, corridos, with modern Shakespeare. These are all like living histories that we're creating. Corridos, they are artworks of history. They're songs about our past, or at least how we feel our past and how our past continues to affect us. So when they want to erase these works, when they want to take, I guess, the agency of this of creation out of our hands, they're not wanting to modify our current conditions. They're not wanting to modify how we feel about a certain topic or how we feel about Mexican. Oh, they are wanting to modify how we feel about Mexican Americans. They're wanting to. Wait, I had it in my head really good, and then it went. By wanting to change, corridos from how they are, by wanting to incorporate Mexican American studies into just regular American history, they're trying to kind of just co-opt and do that subtle erasure that Cesar Chavez and his farm workers just marched in order to kind of rob us of our own power, of our own creative industry. As you said, the arts do save, and that is when they attack these institutions, they are attacking us when they feel they can't directly attack us, right? And if you don't want corridos to be so violent, or you don't want people to resonate with corridos anymore, then as an institution of power, I would be like, how do I make my historical moment not resonate with the historical moment out of which corridos came?
When doge is a verb.
When doge is a verb.
It's a meaningful moment to be having this conversation. And I think there is a very beautiful symbolism that we are getting to sit next to each other right now. I think the inspiration is circular. the Borderlands Colectiva essentially discovered me. I didn't really have a name or a place in the literary canon or in the American theater field, the way a lot of the authors who have been published anthologies do. They have an eminence. They receive royalties from their work, and they covenants come to them. But I don't have that, and that was a blessing in and of itself, to be seen in a very, very literal way, and affirmed. And for, I think, the first time in my life, someone threw a scholarly work on what I did, so like that inspiration is circular as well. Like, I've had a whole other life since I made this 10 years ago, and moments like this inspire you to keep on creating. It's no coincidence that when we were making this material into production, the funding went away. It had nothing to do with the present moment now. It was just a matter of artistic opinion. But still, we made it happen anyway. I think that was a community mobilization. And if it were to be realistic, it's possible we may not have the same support we've been having. So we have to be prepared to double down and keep on creating and organizing conversations.
Yeah, and I would say too that the mission of the Colectiva is to support Mexican-American studies and other critical ethnic studies fields, but also to say that we can teach Mexican-American literature and history anywhere. Like, if you can do it in a Shakespeare class, you can do it anywhere, right? I think that's really important. And I will also say too that I think Mexican-American teatro provides a really important model for thinking about how we can do art and political activism in this current moment. I mean, if you think about, back to Cesar Chavez, right? If you think about Teatro Campesino, which was started on the picket lines, right? Like, it's an activist theater. And so some of these plays are really directly in that lineage of thinking about what the activist theater looks like, of making do with what we have, whether we have funding or not, of supporting each other, bringing the community together, and thinking about what can we, right, as a community do? Like, we've seen this art, now what are we going to do? So I just think it's really important to stay rooted in that tradition, because the struggle continues, right?
That's awesome. I think 27 years ago today, this is exactly what we imagined. So thank you for getting us here. Appreciate it. That's so dope. Well, hey, Rodrigo, so you're going to cut the live stream. This is all.
Bye, live stream.
Bye. Ciao.
Adios.
And so for the evergreen one, what we do now, we do 3 6-minute segments. The first one we call home